What's up, guys? Barry Gaming here, back with some more Idle Heroes, and today we're going to be going over kind of like a guide on something that a lot of people have been asking for, and that is what each statistic does in game. So we're talking about things like armor, we're talking about armor break, control immunity, damage reduction, holy damage. That's one that we get the most questions on, is holy damage. So we're going to go over every single statistic that are in the game right now and kind of give you guys at least some basic knowledge of what they're doing so you can better understand how to set up your heroes, especially when it comes to things like armor break and holy damage, when it comes to stones, pets, monsters, all that fun stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoy this one. Hopefully it helps you guys out. Let's jump right into it. So the first way that we're going to take a look at all these stats is going to be from this little information icon right here on your hero screen. It looks like an upside down exclamation mark, but it's really just an I for information. When you click it, you can see all the statistics for your character. Now, we're going to start at the top. We're going to start with attack because there's now two different values of attack and two different values of HP, and they are very important. Number one is your attack value. That is your base attack value, adding in things like gear, your stones, all that stuff, and that is also multiplied by other buffs in the game, whereas the fixed attack is a standard amount that you get from star spawns, maybe monsters, things like that in combat that are static. They are not multiplicative, they're just straight up additive with your other attack value after you go through the attack formula. So the same thing happens with HP. HP is going to give you the amount of health that your character has. Fixed HP is going to be an amount that is static. It cannot be modified. It is just a straight up bonus. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at your big V4 hero that you have, or if you're looking at a little tiny hero down here. You'll see their attack are a little bit different. Their HP is a little bit different, but mainly it is the same amount. And it really does help your lower level heroes. Like if you have some 5-star supports on your account, the fixed HP is huge, whereas the multiplicative HP buffs might not be as much because you're dealing with a much smaller HP pool. So next up after that, we have armor. Now armor is one thing that I think a lot of people get confused about. This is going to be reducing damage that you receive from basics, actives, dots, and passives. Now armor is essentially one of the best ways to get damage reduction, but you can't really modify your armor value. It's more just like an armor value that you have on your hero. There's really no artifacts. There's really, besides upgrading to higher tiers of gear, but even then the gear, it doesn't give you armor. You can't get armor here, you can't get armor here. It's just kind of this static thing that is added to your heroes that helps reduce damage. And I think that's more of a way for them to balance each individual hero by giving them some innate damage reduction that isn't considered damage reduction, but it does reduce damage from basics, actives, dots, and passives. Next up, we have speed, and you guys know how important speed is on your account. Hero that has a higher speed gets to go first. Now, there are some special circumstances with speed. When you have two heroes that have the same exact speed on your team, the one position closest to the first slot will go first. Now, if you have 1920 on your side and the enemy side has 1920, but you're on offense, the offensive hero will attack first. They're identical speeds. The offensive side, whether you're on offense or defense, it doesn't matter. The one on the offensive side goes first. And yeah, you guys know how important speed is nowadays. So that is something that is very, very important to know. Next up is skill damage. This is one a lot of people misunderstand. And the most simple way to put this is skill damage is active when we're talking about active abilities, because it only applies to active abilities, but it's multiplicative on dots. So this one's very interesting. We'll go to a different hero. We'll actually take a look at Ithaca in this situation. So right here, she deals 440% of attack damage against the enemy with the lowest HP. What skill damage is going to do, say you just have, for example, 10 skill damage. You're getting 10 bonus skill damage. What that does is that doesn't multiply this number by 10, it adds it to it. So instead of being 440% of attack, it is now going to be 480% and 50% of attack. Now, there's a couple things to note about that as well. You'll see a lot of times in Aspen Dungeons in our videos, we use an extra demon potion that gives more energy. Well, every point of energy beyond your 100 energy will convert into skill damage. So if you use a demon potion at 100 energy, you're in reality adding an extra 100 skill damage and turning this ability into a 540% damage attack. So that's something to remember, is additive. But when we're dealing with things like poisons, bleeds, any type of dots, the skill damage bonus is going to be multiplicative with that when it comes to the damage formula. It's very interesting. Skill damage, great for dots, decent for active abilities depending on who it is. Of course, the lower the number here on a hero's active, the better it's going to be. If you're talking about someone like Tix, who does a lot of his damage through the enemy's attack, skill damage isn't going to be as important, but it is something to note, and it's a pretty cool interaction with that as well. Next up is going to be precision, another one of these that people really don't understand. So precision is a 1-to-1 statistic against the enemy's block. If you have 10% precision, the enemy has 10% block. Well, now they have a 0% chance to block. If they have 100% to block and you have 30% precision, they now only have a 70% chance to block, which is why just having 100 block isn't always the best situation, especially for those of you who have Eloise, Horus, those characters out there. You are going to sometimes want more than 100 block to get around enemies that have precision. But precision doesn't only just take care of enemies' block. You get 30% of your precision value as attack value. So right here, if we just had, for example, 100 precision, just to make this very, very easy. If we had 100 precision on this Vesa, we would be also converting 30% of that, so 30% additional into attack. Yes, precision converts into attack. If you have 10 precision, that means 3% more attack, which really you don't notice that too much, but there are some artifacts out there where it does make a difference, because you'll have artifacts like Antler's Cane. You have 70% precision. Well, 30% of that is what? 21%? You're actually having an artifact that has 46% attack, because 30% of the 70% precision is also converting into attack value. That is why Antler's Cane is by far the best PvE artifact when you're talking about pure damage. So again, precision is a very tricky stat that not everybody really understands, but it's very good. Now, block, on the other hand, is really good for multiple reasons. Number one, you got heroes like Horus and Eloise that when they do block, they do something. But even if they are not doing something and you have, say, a splendid A and B or even regular A and B on a hero, that still matters, because that 50% block is going to do a lot. If you successfully block an attack, you will be multiplying the damage incoming by 0.7. So essentially lowering the damage by 30%. Now, if you're crit, I believe the calculations is it multiplies it by 0.8. So you're taking all the damage incoming and reducing it by 20%. Pretty sure that's how it works. If I am wrong, especially some of you guys out there that know a lot more about the actual formula breakdowns, leave it in the comments down below, but I'm pretty sure that's essentially how block works. You're multiplying the incoming damage by a lower than 100% number, and that's where you get the amount of damage that is incoming to you. Next up, we have crit. So crit is pretty straightforward. Critting deals more damage. And how much more damage? Well, by baseline, you have a multiplier of 1.5. So if you have 0 crit damage, but you do have 1.5 natively built in, you're going to do an attack that deals 50% extra damage. No, sorry, 150% additional damage. A 1.5 multiplier. No, that's only 50% more. You get the point. You deal more damage. Now, crit damage is when that calculation really comes into play. There is a cap on crit damage of 150%. So that doesn't matter if you have 120% here, but in combat you somehow get 30% more or 40% more, you're only going to get up to 150% additional crit damage with a total max multiplier of 450%. So it's a 3.5 multiplier max, I think. Or 4.5 multiplier. So it does a lot more damage, and that's why for a lot of heroes, crit is a big deal, because if you have a ton of crit damage as well, you're gonna hit like a truck, especially if you have things like Punisher staves. They're gonna really just hit like a truck. I don't know if I have any on them right here. Not just yet, but you know what I mean. The crit damage is absolutely insane. Moving on, we have armor break. So armor break is pretty straightforward. It's part of the armor multiplier calculation that you simply bypass. So the higher armor break you have, the less the armor is going to account for when you're reducing damage incoming. Very straightforward. It can be useful in certain situations, but I do believe armor break, I don't know if it affects dots or not. I feel like it does. I feel like it definitely does affect dots, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Control immunity, definitely just straightforward. It's the percentage chance that you will not be controlled. If the enemy has control offset, they just basically fight against each other. Simple as that. Damage reduction, again, another one that's straightforward, but it does cap out at 75%. So that's something to keep in mind. If you do have a crown on one of your heroes, I think we got one here. You're going to be having 75% in the first round of all damage reduction. It is going to be capped out at that, but the nice thing about that is, as it falls off, if they have native damage reduction, it will synergize with that as well, which is very, very convenient. I actually wonder, do they show that on the sheet here? They show the 40% damage reduction, and I think that's just the 25... Actually, no, 35. So all damage reduction, it works as a completely different stat when it comes to this sheet here. And I actually don't know if all damage reduction stacks with damage reduction. That's something that I'm going to have to research on my own. And lastly, we're going to come to holy damage. This is one that we get a ton of questions on. But essentially what holy damage does is it will work with your basic, your active, your dots, and your passives to do additional bonus damage that bypasses the enemy's armor multiplier. So essentially what that means is, you know how we said if you have a certain amount, just say they have a certain amount of armor, they're only taking 70% of the damage incoming. Well, this is going to be bonus damage added on top. So say you did your normal attack and this is doing 1,000 extra holy damage. It's not going to be lowered by armor damage reduction, but it will be lowered by regular damage reduction. So that's something to keep in mind. It is just bonus damage, which is why on a lot of heroes that do a lot of ping damage, like Russell's ability, where he just pings with every arrow gets that holy damage, which makes it very, very strong. So some heroes very good with holy damage, other heroes not as useful. So hopefully this kind of helped you guys out understand the statistics. I know a lot of people ask questions. If you have more questions, leave them in the comments down below. If you have any additional information to add, leave it in a comment down below as well, and I'll see you guys next time.